if you're hearing the sound of my voice, and I think that you are. Come on. Oh my gosh. What a morning we have had with the digital world. Chat's up now. Okay, that works. Oh, wait. Just getting our Instagram settings plugged in, and we'll be up in just a moment. Instagram, good, okay. Just a tooth pull. Almost there. Almost there. Whoops. I have a video I want to show Rob this morning, so I have to pull it up because it's something special. Hit that like, everybody. Let them know you're here. Let's see. Welcome to the show, everybody. Everything is just fine. I don't want you to worry. I have, everything was falling apart, but I have put it back together. Everything's okay. It's fine. My camera's a little wonky, but I think I look better. I turned off the filter that makes me look handsome, and this is just raw feed because I don't trust that anything else is out there. So, just people, I just want you to know that everything's okay. It's a mild panic attack, but nothing I can't handle. And also, hype train. All right, 1 second. I'm going to bring on our dear friend, Rob Glenn, joining us. Hi, Rob. I just want you to...
Hi, everybody.
Just saying that the internet's been a little wonky this morning, but I'm okay. I just want everybody to know that psychologically, I am just fine. I'm not having a panic attack at all. I'm good. I'm good. All right, but hold on 1 second. Back to, all right, here I am. Hi, hello. I'm wearing this shirt not on accident this morning. So, hello. Everybody says I sound a little hoarse. That was kind of a comedy voice. I'm actually okay. Big week, obviously, but I gotta say, and first of all, welcome Rob, of course, from Root Design in Chicago, who's going to hold our hand and walk us lovingly through the golden fields, the fields of gold of AI this morning, because so much is changing so fast. And we'll talk about ChatGPT Omni a little bit, which is them trying to chase the Pi dog, I think, a little bit.
Yeah,
and
it's like O, small O, right?
Yeah, but the O is for Omni because it's like everywhere. And it's not the Omega because that would be the last. Okay, right out of the gate, I have this is a genuine question in hi chat room. Welcome to the show. If you have questions for Rob, throw them in there, and Andrea will try to farm a few of them. I hope if I'm not overloading her this morning
today.
Yeah, that there was a period, and maybe this is a industrial pre Moore's law kind of a thing, that being first out of the gate with an invention was crucial to market share and control of the industry going forward. If you had to fabricate something out of metal, and or a new piece of machinery, an engine, even a new spark plug, as it were, if you were first, everybody else was chasing you. You had the patent for it, and you were racing ahead of them with this patent, and they had to wait years for you to let go of that patent or license it out to them if they wanted to use yours, or they had to invent something wholly different so as not to infringe on that patent. And so being first was crucial in business. Increasingly, it seems like especially in AI, because things are moving so fast, that third is better.
Yeah.
Fifth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think that's generally based on the fact that the previous stuff that you're talking about, the earlier things, they require time and a lot of capital and a lot of tinkering and things like that. And software is different than that. You can literally just throw it out there and have it work itself out while people use it.
Right.
There's that book, Good to Great. That's a pretty popular business thing. They make the point that, or that author makes the point that being second or third is much better. That great companies are typically not the first. But so I mean, what are you saying, that the Omni is?
I'm saying that
technically not first with that.
No, not at all. I'm actually saying that Apple, with their version of Siri that I think they're aiming for August, is a smarter, more modern business model these days. Because what are you going to do? Because you and I, just in the last little bit that we've been doing this, and I thank you for coming on here, because you're demystifying it for a lot of people, and I think calming them down, which is good, because there was a woman who wrote like Human Rights and Robot Wrongs or some book, and she was on the BBC yesterday. She wrote this book in the last like 2 fucking months about AI is going to crush us all, and I was throwing a fit listening to this idiotic doomer interview about this, because it was so far off from the real concerns that we have. Because the real concerns aren't, I mean, her big thing was, is a very sad story out of Belgium, that a dude fell in love with his chatbot, and after 6 weeks of talking to this chatbot, text, by the way, not the audio ones we've heard, not Pi, not any of these other ones, he did himself in, leaving behind a wife and 2 kids because he was enamored of this AI. But on top of it, and this is the part that they don't really get into, because she was like, we got to watch out for this. People are going to not have human relations. They're going to fall in love with these things, and then some company is going to pull the plug, and your AI girlfriend's going to be dead, and you're going to freak out like somebody whose Tamagotchi battery went dead, and you're going to do yourself in, and this will be the end of humanity. What she left out was the fact that this guy, in talking to this chatbot, was convinced that climate change is going to kill us all acutely, not over time, not in a way that we can remedy it, and not in a way that, obviously scientific technology and AI, which I'll point to, is actually helping us solve the energy problem at a rate no one saw coming. That's the beautiful part of this. That he did himself in because he thought the world's going to be a hellscape. And he was kind of in love with this digital thing, and he's like, I'm a loser and the world's going to end, so what's the point? It wasn't that this thing didn't talk him into it. And it's movies like, Ex Machina, which I fucking hate, where the guy makes his sex robots and then they stab him to death because they're, they want to go outside or something. It's just so stupid. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. It makes me mad how stupid it is. But that's where her focus was. Like, we're not going to even make friends anymore. I'm like, speak for your fucking self. That I think being ahead of the game is the problem right now. Everybody else, there's a little bit of like hurry up and wait going on. Even Gemini, they leaked they had the Gemini release of Google's AI this week, and it's going to be on Android phones. If they're talking very few months into the future, in the same way that Apple's talking into 2025, they're really slow stepping this because they got more on the line. Do you think there's going to be like a slingshot effect, maybe, where the big heavy hitters are waiting and then they come around?
Well, for sure. I mean, we don't know how it's going to implement or how it's going to sort of weave into the tech that we currently have, like how it's going to be delivered to us. And you bring up Siri from the standpoint of Apple has a very large user base, and they have a walled garden in terms of their hardware. So they are particularly well positioned to have, a version of Pi or a version of Omni as Siri, right? And it's better positioned because it's already integrated into their phone. So it can, it can be useful in that sense. Whereas it can be useful in that it connects things up that you're already using. Whereas OpenAI's model, it's more like a API that you call. That's what they're trying to get, and it needs to be sort of interlaced, or it needs to be like put into your software, if you will, as a
so it references it out. For people that don't know, an API is like this. I forget what the A and the P and the I stand for. It's like
I always forget too.
Associate Programming Interface, something like that. But anyways, the point is that it's like think of it as a porthole in your software, that the software can reach through the porthole into another. So I almost punched you in the face on the show. I didn't mean to do that.
That's all right. You can take it, Hal.
Right. I'll reach the other way. So the porthole is in there, and it's got all the information and the available technology in it, and you reach through that whenever you need it in terms of the software. So if it needs a piece of data, or it needs this personality affect or any of that shit, you reach through and it pulls that from. It uses that technology when it needs it. Increasingly. For the AI apps you see, it's like 90% porthole, 10% UI. and those are the ones that are going to die really quickly. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you increasingly, like, Apple is trying to do this thing where you use ChatGPT, and it's like the porthole is 30% of its interface, and the rest of it is what you're used to with Siri and how it works, and the rest of the stuff on your phone, the chip on your phone, so that stuff stays private for the most part, and that portal has more privacy and clearance on it than you would see in just a regular app somebody cranks out.
Yeah, but more than that, Apple controls all the apps on their phone.
Yeah.
So they can allow, we'll call Siri the app, right? Siri can basically like interface with your calendar and with your email and all the other things on your phone that you use. It can have access to those because they already own the territory, if you will.
Right.
Whereas in a Windows system or an Android system, it's a lot of different people's, I'll call them like different computers or different companies, and they have to sort of talk to each other. And in terms of like normal people being able to make a thing that is useful to people, OpenAI has probably got the better model. It's a more open source, if you will. It's not open source in terms of what they provide, but anybody can access it and use it however they want. Whereas the Siri one is going to be a little bit more controlled. So Apple, if you say Apple is the best at creating good user interface, in theory, they should have a leg up on making the best way to interact with all of the stuff on your phone through Siri.
Right. And also again, there's a quality control aspect personality-wise that their entire brand is on the line, which startups don't have a problem with that. Startups can throw shit against the wall, and if they're like, I like this AI, it's kind of a dick or whatever, which is what Elon Musk is trying to do with Grok. Grok is supposed to be like if Siri was an asshole. Or right. That honestly, that was his, it's his kind of attitude about this, which is just, it's lame, but it's a reality. That's what he was shooting for in this regard. But increasingly, I find that there's benefits and there's pluses and minuses to all the AIs that are out there. That what they're trained on, how they're crafted, what their basic underlying theme is, I guess. And so, what you're finding is that people will want to choose a different language model for different stuff. So
exactly.
I've seen a bunch of stuff lately, especially, and this is where the AI agents thing will come in, which is, I want to talk to you a little bit about that today. AI agents is all the buzz now. And here, and so an AI agent is like AI with a mission or access to, how would you describe an AI agent? Yeah.
I would say so if AI was sort of like, if ChatGPT, you just go to it, think of that as sort of a general sense of humanity because it's been trained on everything, right? So it's sort of like I don't want to call it the middle because it's not the middle, but it's like what most people say, maybe is the right way to say it. And so then an agent would be, you tune the whole and you focus on what traits a particular person might have. So you could tune it to be more like a math professor as opposed to a mechanic. You could tune it to be an 8th grader versus a college grad, and it can respond to you as if it were that personality, I guess is a good way to say it.
Right. Yes.
So that would be one aspect, and then the second aspect is you purposely connect it to something. It's technically not connected to something now until you do it. So if you purposely connected GPT's chatbot to your text or to your email, then it's a personality that's now an agent for sending you emails.
Right.
Or sending your emails.
Yeah.
So you have to purposely tune it and purposely connect it.
Right. And because of the personality, how it's actually trained, it has a not just because all of them are kind of trained on everything they can get their hands on to some degree. There's a little bit of like just go scrape the internet for information, and maybe they curtail it a little bit, like stay away from Pornhub. But for the most part, just learn how people talk, or they input stuff starting on one basis. Some will do like Perplexity. They'll start with just scientific websites and scientific papers and scientific lectures. So what this thing was root trained on as it grew its abilities was on the language style and the interactive style, like of everything from TED Talks probably is the most conversational it got as far as what it was fed to learn, to simple academic physics papers that are as wonky as you could possibly get. Okay. Right. So that one, and when you go to that, it will kind of, no matter what, forever and ever and ever, because that's where it came from, it will always be nerdy in that way in its interaction. You can fix it and you can adapt it a little bit, but that's where it comes from. And as they try to build brands for these things, like if you want this and you want it really done right, talk to Claude. You want, which is the, it's not the Google one, it's, I don't know who does, Microsoft, I think, does Claude or whatever. Anyways,
you brought up Claude last week, and I wasn't sure.
Yeah, Claude balls, what I call him. But Claude is one of the big LLMs that people use, and it's got a Siri will have a particular style. Alexa will be tied forever to.
Here's what I found.
Simmer.
Amazon. It's Amazon back.
Yes, it will always. Yeah, it's made on Amazon, and it is by Amazon and for Amazon. So ultimately, it will always try to wink and a nod and nudge you, kind of like, you can buy that right now. Here's a link, and that's
exactly.
not necessarily bad. Thank you, Claude is Anthropic. Thank you, music for in our chat room. For
Anthropic's the parent company, like OpenAI is to ChatGPT, and then they're backed by Amazon. Is what I'm trying to say.
Right. So that they've got two routes they're going. One is wholly associated with AWS, which is the Amazon system, and then the other one is meant to be its kind of free-floating version, which would be Claude.
Right.
And it will do certain things better than others because they'll feed it that way, or the users that use it will teach it to be that way. Increasingly, and this is why Siri, I think, is in terms of integrating it with OpenAI, it seems like what you're gonna really get is access to multiple AIs, and you can choose from a drop-down menu of which one your interface uses to talk to that one. Like ask, hey S lady, ask Claude about blah blah blah. Hey S lady, ask Pi if she's got a minute to talk about whatever, or call up my hey S, ask Perplexity this and that, and she'll focus on them through the API. That makes sense.
Yeah. But more so, like if you're sitting on your laptop and you're using ChatGPT to, I don't know, like help you write something, like review or edit your writing or however you use it. You have to have sort of like a Word window or whatever uses your word processor. You have to have that open, and you have to be writing in Word, and then you have to copy paste it over to ChatGPT. If you wanted to see that, you have to sort of like work together. They have to sort of work separately. And what Apple will do is they'll just merge those two things together, so that as you're typing in Word, and I'm using a Microsoft product, sorry, but as you're typing in Word, that's what Copilot is trying to do, where Copilot, instead of being a separate entity, it's always
trying to do it.
It's always trying to like communicate with you as you write and stuff like that.
Right.
So what I'm trying to get at is Apple's version, as opposed to some of these other ones, because they've already got you in their phone, in their laptop, or their iPad. Those things will sort of blend together, and you won't really even know well, you will, but it's not going to be two separate things. They'll blend together in a nice way. And that's the hardest part, I think. When people say they don't understand how they're going to use it or what to use it for, the big thing that they're talking about is they just don't see how it's going to connect. how like it's not useful to me because I'm typing in Word and I want to,
Right.
So it's this sort of blending of them all together that is going to continue to happen, and Apple's well positioned for that.
Well, it's hard to choose. You've got these huge companies, Microsoft, Google, Apple, developing their own large language models and working in partnership with these smaller offshoot companies that are getting increasingly, getting bigger and bigger. Between OpenAI and NVIDIA, both of them doing this kind of like run around. But I don't think any of them, my friend, can compete with the AI I'm about to show you. I prepare to be amazed. This is Human Pal. Human Pal is the ultimate AI real like humans, and these are videos created by AI tools. So, I mean, as far as science goes, I'll see if you'll be able to hear this.
Hey, my name is Arya. I am an avatar created by Human Pal. This video is about Human Pal.
Yeah.
Human Pal is a software platform that allows you to create videos featuring realistic artificial intelligence presenters like myself.
Yeah,
you can type in a script and the software will generate a video with a digital human speaking your text.
Language.
It's overwhelming. I know. Yeah.
Some of the key features of Human
Well, that's
Pal.
a really bad implementation.
Well, here's this is 1 day ago. It's amazing. It's an incredible veto from Human Pal.
Text to speech. Human Pal uses text to speech technology to convert your script into audio. You can choose from a variety of voices and languages.
No doubt.
AI presenters. The software offers a variety of digital human avatars that can deliver your message.
I just love it. I just love it. I gotta tell you, things have gotten so good that it's spooky with like Pi and stuff that we're playing this, that it was like, I was literally looking. Somebody in the chat's like, I don't think she's a real person. All right, okay. I have to say, like, I was looking for like, hey, how far have we come? And that one came up, and I was dying. It felt like a sketch about how bad they were a year ago.
A year ago, like you could have done that 7 years ago, probably.
Right, it's true. Yeah. Well, it's it's like the Chinese AI that they always have at the events. That's really a woman behind a curtain using a microphone.
Mechanical Turk. You heard that term?
Yes. Yeah. What is that? Is that like when they
it comes
operated?
From it comes from like 1800s, where there was a chess playing mechanism thing, and people would go play the chess playing machine, and what they realized or found out was there was a guy underneath playing the chess. But the Amazon actually had a whole API in this sense, where they called it the Mechanical Turk, and you would like set up image recognition tasks, and they literally just had a bunch of people on their computers clicking the answers to the questions. They literally called it the Mechanical Turk. I think it might have been part of their early machine learning training.
Well, it's not surprising that because you can do a lot of no-code shit right now, people are like using AI to create crap versions of AI, which is hilarious. But I think this goes to my kind of point that being fourth or seventh or something is going to be the key, because after, I'll give you an example. So do you remember, Rob Glenn, you're very PC oriented, but I don't know if back in the day you might have been Mac leaning in the 90s perhaps. Do you remember eWorld?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I've never been a Mac guy, just so you know.
Okay. All right. So Apple set up, back when they made the Apple Newton. Let's see.
What was it called again?
eWorld. Let's see if I go. Remembering eWorld, Apple's forgotten online service. I'll bring this up. It was fucking adorable. Here, I'll show you. This is. It looked like this. And it was like it was a social media site, essentially. That, by the way, I think Apple should totally bring back Kitschville the shit out of it, and everybody could just like walk around in it or whatever. But it was a little social media, like it was their way of making databases visual. They were trying to bring the Apple kind of cute hello UI to databases, which was the original social media, the places where the kid from War Games hung out, right?
So this is like late 90s, like 95,
yes.
6, 7. Okay.
Yeah. And you would like you could go to the newspaper building and the news would be there and you could read the daily news there and interact with people who are reading the news too. And then you could go to, you could have your own house, which is just like a storage thing where your documents are. And then it was just hilarious. A museum, you could go and look at pictures in great museums or whatever. Like, hey, check out the Mona Lisa. It's hanging in this thing. And you could just bring it up. And, of course, it would take, a minute and a half to scan out and whatever. And you were hoping it didn't have a penis. That was the thing. down. All right. So, that was the gag back in the day, right? So it was very Second Life-y, before Second Life ever existed. And it was pre like social media. Like it had an email. Like this is, not bad for that period of time. Like it was definitely well ahead. They were definitely testing the waters of what would become normal for how you do email stuff. And there was like it had a browser within it. There was all this, and what kind of killed it was this kind of API thing that we're talking about almost, is that how do you get to the web through this software? And there was this whole thing about if you're corralling people into only using your web browser, which is what got Microsoft in trouble, there'll be antitrust rules and blah, blah, blah. And they had a link right here that took you to the web. And because that would be your portal and it was built into the software, they were concerned that because they make the machines and they make the software and all this stuff, that they would get into trouble. And that was partly what killed it. And the other thing is it was just way ahead of its time. Nobody was social mediating. And at that point, it was like a cartoon MySpace.
That was back in, so the first browser was, I think, 94 or 93, right, or something like that. That was Mosaic from University of Illinois, and but before that, everybody was in chat rooms essentially. I think it was IRC or something like that.
Yes, and so this died in 1996. It started in, I want to say, 93, and here I'll show you. This is my favorite part of it. The way you would get on eWorld is that you would get discs in the mail.
That's like Amazon's model of getting you in.
That's right. You would get one of these, and then you would have to load it on your computer. I had it on my Apple IIci, which was a fucking workhorse. I love that thing. But my favorite part of it is that the discs they sent you, nobody ever even made their own discs that were kind of permanent. You could reuse these if you wanted to. All you had to do was take a pen and poke the hole through those things, and you couldn't write over them. So that they just left them that way. And you're like, okay, once you've loaded it, you get a free disc. Was kind of the thing. Like, wow, I got a free floppy disk for almost so much better than just a piece of stupid software. And it lasted 22 months. It had 147,500 subscribers. AOL had 3.5 million at that time, but it was basically Apple's AOL Online, right?
Yeah, at that time, everybody was just trying to figure out what they were going to do with this thing called the internet. And and other people, a lot of people outside of universities and things like that, they didn't even understand what it was. Mm-hmm. And that's not unlike where we are now with what we're calling AI or generative AI. And it's, if you go back to then, like you could have been number 300 and you'd have been fine. And that's kind of what Gen AI is. it's so like open that
Yeah.
you can kind of make it do whatever you want, and nobody understands what they might want to do with it because it's just so open-ended.
Can I? So the other thing too is like we're seeing an increase because of AI. I've always said technology is deflationary by its very nature. If it's allowed to be, it will be cheaper and faster because that's the competition race. Everybody is trying to outrun and out cheapen everybody. Let me give you an example. So it costs, I want to say something like between $11 and $21 a month or whatever, depending on the service you're using for AI. Month as a monthly cost.
Yeah.
To use it, okay, which and I think the low end one is $11, which is not much at all, $11-12, okay. eWorld in 1994 with 149,000 people on it cost I'll show you, cost $8.95 a month for the service in $1995, which is like $20.
Yeah. Right.
And additional access charges were $7.95 an hour from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and $4.95 an hour otherwise. So if you were on from
basically
6,
like phone lines.
yes.
They
So if you wanted to be
open phone
an
lines.
hour, $8 an hour.
Yeah.
During business hours, it costs you $8 a fucking hour to get on like this, like rudimentary, low GIF level, 8 to 6, like 60. I think it was 24-bit. Honestly, I don't want to be a dick, but it was like 24-bit imaging software to write an email by yourself that took forever. And you're like, I hope it goes and all this shit. I mean, just think about like, let's say, I don't know, you're doing like, I don't know, whatever, 3 hours a day. It's $24 a day, all month long, on top of $8.95. Like you're doing $125 a week just to use email and shit inside this service.
Yeah. So because, I mean, if you want to keep going with this, the sort of then versus now, the things that those hurdles that are no longer there anymore.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what's going to make us not end up with a behemoth version of AI. So going back to this time that you're talking about when Apple didn't really become the Apple we know today till much later. What Netscape and Microsoft were doing their thing. And Mosaic that I mentioned became Netscape, and then Netscape and Microsoft were in a war with each other for a long time. And so these two behemoths, I guess they became, they were sort of your path, and AOL was probably the third. It had to be that way because the sort of pipes that got you to them, the phone lines, if you will, that got you there, they were expensive to use. Well, that infrastructure is going away. Computer power, server space, or server usage is going way down in terms of cost per unit of work. And so because of these things have progressed, it's not going to be the same as back then. It's going to be much more fragmented and much more sort of specific to tasks. And you're really talking about just inside of, I can't show today. We didn't cover that because you wanted me to show some of the work we do, but in the future I will. But if you start to try to use it for your work, you will very quickly find that it's very difficult to make it do just what you want it to do. And because of that, like the real like sort of good uses of it in the future are going to be like the people that can tune it really well to do specific tasks and then link those tasks together into something, again, useful. So, I don't even really think that the big app is a Siri or whatever, like a, in a 4 Omega or whatever it's called, the guy talking on his phone, their video. Did you watch the introduction video from OpenAI about that? The guy talking to his phone. It looked like an episode of You Talking to Pi.
Yeah, totally. I like everybody wants to be Hal. It's just reality. Everybody, if I do it 2 days later, it's everywhere. But and it was clearly that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. This is my point. Is like we can't look at the past in terms of what this AI thing will do, because it's much more fragmented. It's much more diverse, and and because of that, it's open to a lot of people to be able to do interesting things. And so go out and use it. Like go out and try stuff.
Right.
And you'd be surprised at how far you can get without having to call an expert.
Yeah, I think that's the crucial part of it. So again, I'm increasingly stunned by, like, I was watching I think the very telling stuff I like watching the panic attacks about it, and I like watching the financial folks talking about it. Yeah. Because if anybody is talking out of their ass right now, it's the financial world about AI. They have no idea how to monetize this and what that monetization is going to look like, because they couldn't possibly, because they're especially investment class folks. Like the investment class folks are completely lost because you can't get ahead of it. You can't.
Yeah, no, it's not possible.
There is a hi. Okay.
And so so again, like if you're gonna like think about where to put yourself in the mix, I continue to say you just use it, like because you like. Not the people that supposedly like have they're like designing it or have their fingers on the buttons of production of this thing. They have no idea what it's going to do either. So. Here's the other thing too, is that, and you and I know this because you and I, if like left to our own devices, we would nerd out on an embarrassing level. In a way that is completely useless to everybody else who's in the room. Right. And we have to tone it. We have to like be at like a 5
way down. Like I am riding the fucking parking brake right now on this conversation every time we have these, because I'm like, hey, easy there, buddy, easy. Because I could, if I start jabbering, it will not stop. But that's the thing, is that people who are involved in this stuff, what it would take mentally, and this is exactly why Ex Machina is a stupid, fucking, terrible, shit, garbage movie. Don't get me started. Oh my God. Is that in the story, if you'll recall, the massive brain scientist that you created, all these synthetic people that are walking around, half naked and what have you. When he didn't want to talk about all this tech stuff, man. And then when he gets drunk, he just wants to dance and he just wants to hang out. And I was like, how to tell that your actor can't do the tech speak they were hired to do?
Right.
Because you had to reshape the whole fucking thing. Let me tell you something. Anybody capable of that level of scientific discovery and advancement, if they got drunk, they'd speak in equations. You wouldn't even be able to fucking...
They wouldn't want to stop talking about what they did.
No.
Like, let me tell you what I did. It's so cool.
Absolutely. They would talk about so one of the things in it is this muscle fiber that he has in it that's this spongy, instead of, piston systems, he's got this spongy fluid, synthetic muscle that they made it. Okay, that in and of itself is a year's worth of worthless bar conversations. There's so much going into making that. Right. That's why we don't have it yet. And I always have this problem, and I'm sure it drives you crazy when you watch stuff. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I think so. Is that when you see a technology in a movie, and it's just kind of passively there. And I always use the hoverboard in Back to the Future as the prime example of this. That the cascading technology that now becomes possible, if you have anything even remotely like that, is off the fucking chain. Like, it changes human interaction. Why do any of the cars have wheels at all?
Well, they have wheels because you need the wheels. I could go on about Sid. I went to a talk with Sid Mead. He's the art director for Blade Runner.
Right.
And he would say that like spaceships need things pointing out the back so that you know that it goes forward, and it needs
Yes.
round things to like let you know that it's moving in that direction.
Right.
And that's why, I mean, but in reality,
never,
you know,
not at all.
like one of those like
okay.
sails.
You beat
for
gravity.
protons.
They beat. It's beyond that. They beat gravity. Like there's no. There. One of Biff's things was that he's just like this super rich kind of oligarchical casino running dickhead or whatever. Like fucko. You can go to space now for basically free. There is no situation where there's not even dirt on the fucking street anymore, because even the robots necessary to craft those devices and put them together, because if you were near them while they were put together, the anti-gravity stuff could just separate all the molecules in your fucking body. So they'd have to be made at some sort of automated factory. So you'd have automated robots floating on these things, cleaning everything up. Why is there trash on the streets? This makes no sense to me. Like that's the part that makes me nuts in these situations. That if you have this technology, it got there. It evolved. It didn't. There's. I mean, maybe it's immaculate conception, and that's our problem with some tech. That, oh my God, where'd that come from? But if we see like social media, it came from eWorld and AOL Online and all that shit and all the mistakes that were made, right? And this and the same thing with all these AIs. Like this evolution, I think, and that's where we go to the third, fourth, and fifth iteration. Is that this evolution is happening so fucking fast. It's so fast. That evolutionary process is making it feel more magical and impossible.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
What's the quote? Like any technology that is beyond something is magic. What's that?
Yeah,
quote?
science at its highest level is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah, there you go. So and it's basically just because the problem gets so big, or the concept of what it could be gets so big that you just stop thinking about it. You know. Mm-hmm. And you know, in sci-fi, they have to ground things in reality, because you just won't follow along with it if it goes too far off of what you know to be true today.
Right.
But the way to think, so it's hard to think about AI in the sense of like it's so open that its possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
And not go straight to it's going to kill me. And you
right.
know, and the reason for that, you know, it's a thought. The reason for that is because we've watched movies where we predicted that it would kill us. Like, what if we watched movies where we predicted it wouldn't kill us? It would like make that's Star Trek, right? It would make a utopia.
It's C-3PO and R2-D2. It's funny that when we talk about these things, that's not who we talk about first, because that actually permeates more than even the Terminator. That is the robot most people are familiar with, is C-3PO and R2-D2. And both of them are examples of a future decision in how AI interacts with human. On the one hand, it doesn't speak a language. It makes noises so you can generally get what it's up to. It understands everything everybody's saying, but translating everything be a waste of fucking time. So it just chirps at you and you kind of get it like a dog. And so you have this interaction with it. Everybody interacts with R2-D2 like a pet. But a pet you can understand at a slightly higher level. C-3PO, what does he do? He's a translation droid.
Translator. Yeah.
That's what he does. He speaks bocce. He speaks, you know, he can talk to your load lifters because they don't necessarily, because you're using scrap shit from all over the universe, and they all speak a different language because they were programmed on different planets by different evolved beings. Right? Somebody, Alio's just like, what about K9 from Doctor Who? K9 from Doctor Who is in some ways a knockoff R2-D2. It's also like the dog monkey thing on Battlestar Galactica, and Twiggy, whose entire job was twofold. One, walking around looking like a tin penis, and the other one was carrying Dr. Theopolis everywhere because they hadn't figured out a way to give Dr. Theopolis wheels on a remote control device in 1981 for that. So you had to have fucking Mel Blanc, Beatty, voicing, "You got it, Buck," that kind of, cute robot. And they would all the advanced beings, the AIs that ran their world after we fucked up. Remember, again, that's another cleanup robot. That's a robot that We did that. We destroyed each other. We had a nuclear war. And then the robots went, all right, we'll be in charge now. You guys are assholes. And so Dr. Theopolis, and I don't know how he got his doctorate. I guess it took about a second. And why wouldn't you call him all doctor at that point? I mean, doctor? Glad I'm not sick. But he wore him around like this big fucking Flava Flav medallion, right? He'd carry him around. And it was cool because it lit up. Yeah. So, and then Robbie the Robot, of course, is another example. Protecting the kid, had tread, pincers, was the big deal. And he would always warn you of danger. We have a lot more good robots and good computer interactions than bad. We basically have the Terminator and HAL, you're welcome, that are, but it's like, imagine, if you will, that anytime somebody brought up a psychologist, they brought up Hannibal Lecter.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that was what he did.
There. And it's more about, I said this before, it's more about like the unintended consequence, the runaway, you set it off to do something and you didn't realize that by doing that faster than you did before,
they gave me the hands of a killer. That's the whole when we started. Yeah, go ahead.
That's true. Like we already can see things in the stock market when the computers kind of or when the algorithms kind of start going off into their own world and things crash or they go high or whatever. So we have a lot of examples of a blackout that might have happened because somebody did the wrong thing at the power station or something like that. So there's a lot of examples of mistakes that can happen, and yes, they will happen. But there's all kinds of things in place along the way that try to mitigate those things. And when they don't, then we stop and we solve them. We do this for everything.
Everything, right. Yeah. I mean, every piece of mechanical equipment that opened and shut a dam went through 16 iterations. This is why I think I laugh at people who hate bureaucracy. Motherfucker, if we wouldn't need shit in triplicate if some dickhead hadn't found a way to sneak around 2 versions of the document and weasel his way into getting free shit. We need a third because some asshole's always going to find a way to work his way around 2. And that's always been true. And so they're doing this, they're definitely easing their way into it. And again, this goes to our 4th and 7th is probably your sweet spot. It's like you always want to come in second on American Idol. You don't want to win because if you want a career, you got to come in second. If you want to be I don't like that very much. Kelly Clarkson, the one, the one exception, the very first one, but everybody after that. Same thing with these kind of things. It's like you got to hang out, tap the brakes a little bit, let other people make the mistakes a little bit, see what the use cases are, and then jump on those with both feet when it's a permanent use case. And a lot of times
you're talking about building a business around something or trying to use try to build your own version of it. As opposed to a normal person, they can use any one of them at any time, and they're not there's no investment to do that right now.
Yes,
and
good point.
For a normal person, there's zero investment to use AI. You can then upgrade a little, like you do with Chat GTP 4. But the other thing that I want to say is that if you look at all the different companies doing AI, they have their chatbot. The underlying principle of how they work is all the same. Nobody has some special, unique. They have maybe ways of making it a little more efficient or something like that.
Right.
But the way that it works, they're all exactly the same. They use an LLM model. They use machine learning. All those things. So there's the only thing special about one versus the other is where it's coming from and what it's connected to.
Right. In the background, waiting to come on in the next hour is Brooklyn Dad himself. Majid is waiting there. We'll get him here in just a second. But I want to finish out with Rob in that I want to know which AI things you're using currently. I have added a couple to mind since last we spoke. And I had a couple of questions that people asked when we were talking about this last week after the show. The primary being is the best upscaler
I thought I got to say, the Leonardo one works really well, and so does Copilot. Both of them, if you take an image in and you go, hey, make a better version of this image, turn it, tighten it up, focus on this particular element in it and blur out the rest. Both of them do extraordinarily well with most stuff for free, basically.
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts. But that was my one. So your new stuff.
Here,
I want to hear.
Image generator, we use Creo or Stable Diffusion.
Creo? Right. Stable Diffusion's the base model for those at home. So Stable Diffusion is its own model. And then some use Stable Diffusion as their base.
On our servers.
Right, because you're super nerdy, and I appreciate
we're dorks.
Yes.
So we use, but we use those not as in a design. We're designers. In a design process, you typically somebody comes to you with an idea. You do a lot of sketching, concept sketching. So all AI currently is used for in our process is the very front end of sketching. In terms of like the image generation stuff. And if you think about the creation of an idea, like drawing or sketching is just communication of a concept or an idea, right? Just like language is the communication of a thought. So if I were to draw on a piece of paper and communicate to you an idea, that's not a lot different than if I were to somehow use an image generator to help you envision.
Do a quick dust up of it. It'll just look more fancy because it uses a lot of moving parts. And increasingly, do you use any of the ones where I've seen a couple of these. I have not tried them out because it seems like a pain in the ass and there's nothing really to be done yet. I'm working on my house design, my super 3D printed house that I intend on making at some point in the future. I'm working on designing that in from an engineering standpoint in one of the AIs that's out there. But I did a SketchUp of it rather than just draw it on a piece of paper and show it to it and go, give me a 3-story house that looks like this. And they do that increasingly. Do you use any of those?
We use, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember the name because one of the guys uses it. It allows you to block in shapes, rudimentary shapes, or if you're like us, we actually sketch a composition, rudimentary composition, and then we'll put that in as a starting point, and then use text generation to then make it. The reason I brought up this process that we use is after we sketch, we typically 3D model something. And then we use a rendering software like Blender, some people know that, to render something. So there's a process where you effectively manually move from a concept that or a sketch that everybody agreed on. Then you spend a little more time modeling and a little bit more time trying to make a photoreal rendering of it. So in our process, we only use it on the front end. And there's the tools.
Everything else is manual, essentially.
That idea into real, they are nowhere near capable.
That's one of the things that where the rubber hits the road, I think we're still a good 6 to 8 months from anything actually becoming kind of the software equivalent of the replicator in Star Wars, where you're like, I want this, and it comes out the way you want it in the end. It's going to take a lot of tweaking in the process, but you can flood the world with garbage with it, which is my worry. And we'll talk about that next time. Rob, thank you for jumping in here. I got our dear friend Majid is in the background. I'm very excited to talk to him. I'm sure we will probably break out into a little bit of AI talk because of Friday, but there's so much to cover. I want to thank you again for helping us walk through this. Next time, I want to talk to you about CRUD. There's a lot of CRUD out there, and people don't know what CRUD is. They can look it up for next time. It's create, read, update, delete. And there is so much AI CRUD out there.
I'll try to get my system set up so that I can show you.
Yes, I'll make a screen for us so that you can share some stuff. Yeah.
We're going to bring our stream down.
It'll be super nerdy next week. I'm very excited. So thanks so much, brother. All right.
Thank you. Have a good one, everybody. By chat.
Thanks. All right. Thanks, Rob. Thank you. Cheers. Off he goes. And joining us right now, there he is. Majid, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Hal. Thank you for having me on.
Hold on. I don't hear you for some reason on my end. That's me. Don't worry. You don't have to do anything. That's on my end. Fear not. I will put this in
Testing,
advanced
testing.
audio mode, and I will make sure that I monitor you and output. And there you go. And now I can hear you, I think.
Testing. One,
Yeah,
two.
there you go. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. How are you, sir? Welcome.
Hal, I'm great. Happy Friday. It's a big thrill to be here on your show. I remember seeing you on Spider-Man 2
Sure.
on
Yep.
the elevator with Spidey.
Yep. I know him personally. We go way back. Yeah.
I am definitely going to have to check out your previous segment later after this thing we do here, because that was fascinating. I'm personally, I'm a graphic designer. That's my day job. But I'm a little embarrassed. I have not used AI like at all. I'm so far behind the curve. It's kind of embarrassing. I should have, familiarized myself with this stuff by now, and I have not. So
yeah, well, it's interesting because we were the theme of what we were talking about is how it used to be like you got to be right out of the gate and on top of this stuff, or you're going to be left behind. But the reality is this is evolving so fast. There is no ahead because everybody's stepping on a rake in the process. In the first iterations and learning from everybody else. So being kind of the last horse to come around the end when all the other horses have run into each other, yeah, right. It's not it's not necessarily a bad thing. So first of all, it's lovely to talk to you. We've never spoken before. Online, we've had a couple of interactions over the last little bit in the current unpleasantness, as I refer to it.
Yes.
But everybody's from. I think everybody in my audience is familiar with your Twitter account and your feed, your shitter feed. I will call it now because they pronounce it with an X. And you are on Threads and Instagram under the same Brooklyn Dad. Defiant idea.
It's under Padellin.
Yes, Padellin will take you there. But if you look you up, it will take you right to it in the search engines, as it were. Yeah.
Although you're likely to come across at least one or two doppelgangers,
I'm very familiar.
They hate me. They hate me so much.
Right. They want to be you.
The time to duplicate my my account, but they can't. There's only one Brooklyn Dad to find.
Yeah, exactly. You can't try as they might. Forget it. That's why that's why I'm at Hal Sparks on everything. Like you just can't, man. You just can't.
Yeah.
So let's jump straight into the current state of affairs at the very least, because we could go into the mishandling of the pandemic and probably spend 16 hours ruminating on the car wreck, the / train wreck / dumpster fire / manure truck that is Donald Trump and his idea of governing. But your thoughts on the last week of the trial? Have you been following it, as much as everybody else, drinking from the fire hose?
As much as I can. I have been following it. I've been following the commentary. We're only getting like secondhand smoke,
right?
Secondhand exposure from this because no cameras are allowed in the courtroom,
right?
Which is a crime. I think this is like an historic event.
Agreed.
This absolutely should be televised. And it's not like Trump is saying anything. He's just sitting there sleeping and. Can I curse? Can I curse here?
Yeah, of course. I insist.
And shitting
yes,
himself.
shitting his pants. Yeah, right. I called it. I would like to say for the record, when ask Steph, when they were talking about he's asleep, he's snoring. I'm like, wait till he sharts. It's gonna happen. I mean, because it's legendary how much he would shit himself on The Apprentice.
Yeah.
And there's no way he fucking doesn't do it in a courtroom, just sitting there in this encapsulated environment. I have had a theory.
The funniest thing about that is that he has attempted to project this strong, powerful He-Man alpha dog image, and at the same time calling his opponent President Biden Sleepy Joe, and you can't put two sentences together. And everything he says, every accusation is a projection, is a confession. Yes. So. Yeah.
Well, it's on a more embarrassing level than just 1-to-1. it'd be one thing if he called him Sleepy Joe and that was that. But he's literally, there's reports of like how his face goes slack and he's just falling over the side. He's gonna drool. We know it's gonna happen if it hasn't already, and they just are too far away. Like the artist is too far away to get the drool, or the details aren't there, whatever. But it's gonna happen. And he's shitting himself in court. We know it. And then the whole like macho alpha male thing, like his bitching about how cold it is when no one else is complaining about that is so my mom. Like my mom, I love her, but she's like, put on a sweater, you're making me cold. And I'm like, it's hot outside. She's like, you're making me freezing right now. Put something on. He sounds like that. It's super weird.
Yeah, indeed. And I find it hilarious. Yeah. What more can we say about his overall weakness? And it's not just what we're seeing in court, but the things that we're seeing outside of court. In the places where he's usually at his quote unquote best, he is now at his worst. At those rallies, did you see in this past week? What is his fixation? His bizarre fixation on Hannibal Lecter, for starters, right? Like, you couldn't pick a worse guy to say the late, great Hannibal. What? First of all, he's fictitious.
Well, I'll tell you, and he says the same thing about Al Capone. He says the same thing about Al Capone, the late, great Al Capone, the late, great whatever. Like, this is, I'll tell you what it is. I think it's limited, like, cultural input over time. And he's so disinterested. Very few things can hold his interest because he's a fucking mess. And so he only remembers 2 movies: The Untouchables and Silence of the Lambs. He can't remember, and then he vaguely has this kind of like Dirty Harry, Cobra, Airwolf, 80s kind of cop movie, TV, tough guy, Equalizer, kind of, the old Equalizer, the series, not the cool modern Denzel version, but all like squished together in this how things shoulda, oughta be, in his head. And that's it. And everything since then, he's just been, snorting rails of Adderall and Ritalin and Sudafed and fucking porn stars and wasting everybody's time with blathering stories about his fucking golf game. That's what he does. I think he only adapted to those because Al Capone scared him, and so did Hannibal Lecter. Both of those guys, as a human being, man to man, like he can bullshit himself into thinking he's a wrestler, or bullshit himself into thinking he could take out Rocky or some shit, like in his own head. But both of those guys scared the shit out of him. You
could argue that Al Capone, at least when he was alive, and he was doing his thing, actually was kind of a folk hero. Like, people kind of... Yes. I wouldn't say everybody, but quite a few people thought that he was cool as hell for, avoiding the man, and he's a gangster, and gangsters. Well, like Gotti were celebrated back then.
In New York, Gotti was a hero for a while. The Teflon Don, remember all that shit? And Trump definitely attached to that stuff. Trump definitely looked in awe at this dude in his silk suits who could buck the system, and was very impressed until he went down, and then he's forgettable. Al Capone lives in this kind of mythological movie version of things, but also Al Capone he went one step further than Trump, is that he actually had orphanages that he kept up. And he would do stuff through the mob in the neighborhood, and by the way, same way ISIS and Hamas and all these other, organizations, fucking Boko Haram and, like the Triad and the British mob, like they do that to kind of ingratiate themselves to, in case you need everybody to keep quiet. So you do good stuff. You're like, well, if we send him away, who's going to take in all the orphanage kids? And they shut the fuck up and let it happen. And Trump, I think, looked on with, like, what a great scheme, what a great trick he's pulling on everybody.
But then he can't even follow through with that either. He scams the charities. The charities,
exactly. That's my point. That's where I was going. Yeah, you're absolutely right. He can't even do that. So I think what we're seeing is the collapse of the myth, which you have to get rid of a guy like that. Otherwise, his followers will go nuts again and kill a bunch of people. So you have to make them go. Yeah. Go ahead.
I certainly hope that the myth is collapsing, because in real time we are watching the disintegration, like in real time, the accelerating deterioration of somebody who, just like 6 years ago, was still kind of short-circuiting on a lot of things. You know, he was misfiring. You've seen the video.
Oh, God bless the United States. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And with his inability to drink a glass of water with one hand, he's always needs the second hand to
And tipping it up or whatever. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to drip on my tie. You're like, well, then why aren't you doing this or something? I don't understand why. How does that help? It seems like it looks like somebody. It looked like in Dumb and Dumber when Jim Carrey's trying to get him to drink the laxative, and he's like, very weird.
Action replays in magnified fortune.
So, right, there's so much of those. Like I've been fascinated by, and this is one of the ones that stands out to me when he says
Christopher Columbus, Christopher, huh?
like he's trying to pronounce Christopher Columbus,
God. Yeah.
and his brain won't let him.
Yeah.
And this is years ago. This is in 2020. We have watched, I think, every president that ages, right? If you give a shit, it's gonna age you, because you're confronted with so many difficult decisions.
Right.
But Reagan put off some of that aging because he continued to dye his hair, and he had this kind of Hollywood image of it. But what it did was it triggered his dementia. He was in primary dementia his last year in office. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
His being shot hastened it. It brought it faster. He was already on the arc of it. I watched the 90 whatever it was the 88 convention where he gave a speech it was 92 the 92 convention where he gave a speech. When Bush was running against Clinton, he was trying to give him one last help to get him over the line, and I watched it with Patty and his daughter, and we were watching it. She said his doctor said this speech is going to take a year off your life because it was so stressful. And if you watch that speech, he keeps going, well, okay, when everybody starts applauding, because he's afraid if he gets off, he'll never get back.
Wow.
He was so worried he was aware of his brain failing, and he was so afraid that if he gets off track, he'll wander into. Trump is very close to that right now. Like yeah.
I hate what he has done to us. And when I say to us, I'm talking about, like, look, I feel like I still have a good, strong sense of my own humanity. And when I say humanity, I mean my empathy for people who are suffering, right?
Right.
I do still have that. I have it in spades, right?
Agreed.
But this is a big
well, with him, it's like there's a bit of Schadenfreude.
It's like, motherfucker, you have hurt so many people. You put so many of us at risk. You've been such a shit heel. You really deserve whatever the hell is coming your way. And
it feels very karmic.
I hate to say that, because I feel like, if he's an old dude who's suffering, I feel like dementia is literally the worst thing. It's the worst. I hate it, and I fear it too. I've been playing these like mental acuity games with myself and my loved ones for the past, 10, 15, 20 years, just because just to keep the mind sharp.
Keep it tight. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'll let you off the hook a little. Yeah.
I don't wish dementia on my worst enemy. And right now, my worst enemy is Donald Trump. But it looks like he is right now in the throes of dementia.
Yeah. Well, there are two primary things. One is that the one thing his dementia has not interrupted is his shitty attitude towards his fellow man, and specifically women in the country, and that the one through line, there's always what's left of your personality, your character that even when people get dementia and all that stuff, that still rides through. My grandfather maintained his personality even as he got confused and did stuff or whatever, but he was still there. He would just get dates mixed up. My dad would often try to correct him and go, "No, that's Gary. You were blah, blah." And I was like, "It doesn't matter, Dad. He's not going to remember what you're saying. Just make him feel good. He's still the man. He just can't access the stuff that you're hoping he could access. So his soul is still there. He just can't put the ideas together the way he could." And in the same way, what's left over of Trump is his basest instinct. The weirdest part about his dementia is not that it is making him more personal and vulnerable and stuff. It's that he is shedding even the pretense of that he had before. And the best example I can give is that he used to say, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some of them I assume are good people. He has dropped and some of them I assume are good people.
He's gone to the whole vermin thing, the whole Hitler soundtrack.
He has sliced off any of the caveats and has gone straight to the core of what he's doing. This is what you're seeing now is not so much Trump in the throes of his own dementia, because a lot of it, I would argue, is drug-addled. A mess of his own making. Bad diet, not exercising, and snorting all kinds of stimulants and benzos and all that other shit that he did his whole life. It comes back to haunt you. There's a reason why certain rock stars all have the same problems at a certain age, because they all did the same drugs with the same people in 1978, right? You can you can trace it almost to the batch, right? Trump is of the same ilk. And what's happening, though, is the one thing that's still there, the one remnant that's left of who he really is the guy who would be wingman to Jeffrey Epstein, wanted his own personal Roy Cohn, and envies Kim Jong-un. That's the essence of the man. And so when we, and he also said, I know the best words, I'm the best, I know the best people, I know more about this than anybody else. So he's setting himself up for this Clouseau-like rake stomp that's going to happen. You know what I mean? It's different.
You got me with the Clouseau rake stomp.
Yeah, it's just like, and another thing, whap, like that. It's right. Every time it's like, I will see you in the drawing room and down a flight of stairs. Like that is exactly who he is. That's why it's funny.
Oh,
it's
man.
why it's
so funny that Clouseau shit was. Yeah.
Yes. And you know why it's funny? You know why it's funny? Because he's an asshole.
Yeah.
That's what gets lost in the modern Clouseau movies, and I've talked about this on my show before, but like Mr. Bean, the reason the Mr. Bean movie didn't work was because the Mr. Bean movie was made for an American audience, and he's kind of a lovable sap.
Yeah, yeah.
He's not. In the British series, he's a fucking prick. He's terrible.
No,
he's always stealing parking spaces. He's cheating people all the time. He runs out of snacks at his date/dinner party that he's having at his house. So he eats all the pretzels. So instead of getting more pretzels, he pulls a branch in through the window and starts cutting up little pieces of the branch that are this big, and then they cut to the people at the fucking party, and he's walking around like serving fucking branches to his guests because he's an asshole. And that's why when something shitty happens and he's like frustrated, that business that Rowan does, the reason it works is because he set himself up. And there's this old joke about like, seeing a drunk fall down a flight of stairs is funny until he gets up with a bloody nose. Then it's sad. Then it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
Trump is the comedy version because he set it up himself. I'm perfect. I'd live 200 years if I stopped eating junk food. I'm the healthiest president that ever lived. I have the best words.
Michigan gave us Motown. Gave us Motown. Gave us the Mustang.
And that's why that's funny. Biden flubs a word, it's not funny because he has a stutter and he's never said he's the greatest speaker ever. Never even broached the idea.
Here's the thing. Yeah, okay. Thank you for putting me back, for centering me again. Because, President Biden does not denigrate. He doesn't kick. He doesn't punch down. He doesn't kick people when they're down. He doesn't denigrate people. He's a nice guy who actually had to overcome a lifelong issue with stuttering. So he's a hero right there. And on the flip side, Donald Trump not only has lowered. So let's, if you don't mind, can we segue into the
Yes.
whole debate
Yes.
topic, because
Please.
he's lowered the expectations for President Biden so low that as long as President Biden can string two sentences together, he wins, because
Right.
he's made people think he can't put two sentences together. He can barely stand. So
Right.
this is what his audience is expecting to see. And when they see President Biden show up, like it, God forbid, State of the Union President Biden
Right.
shows up, it's a wrap.
That's who it is. That's who's going to be there.
I expect lasers to come out of his eyes and vaporize Donald Trump
Right.
on the stage.
Right.
And at the same time, Donald Trump sets himself up, like he raises the bar with the expectations, with the best words and the greatest this and the greatest that, and he falls miserably short, like the Clouseau rake thing every single time. It's hilarious, actually. Quite hilarious.
His entire ego is a setup for the punchline that is his life.
Yeah.
There has never been a greater example of the Peter principle of somebody just failing upwards in American history, and in many ways, it is the remnant boomer 80s business model ad absurdum. It has finally reached its zenith of bullshit. That arc is done. That Donald Trump is the one putting the flag in that kind of, dad ran the company, so I genetically have a better idea of how this business should run. This old kingdom idea that still existed in some like old magnates and 80s business models of, father to son business, which works when you run a cleaners or something because you're there every day working with your dad, but has nothing to do with anything when you're in management of a, multinational or something. It's absurd. And so he is the end of that arc. He is the well, that shit didn't work out very well, did it? He's the example. He's the living example of it. And as you're absolutely right. And they won't be able to help themselves. You've seen this, right-wing media, Newsmax, and all this stuff. They can't stop talking about how doddering and weak and stupid Biden is, and they will not stop, even if they know it, and it will help Trump. Mainly because if they're caught for a second saying, I don't know, the guy's got some game, he did the State of the Union, but they'll go, fuck you, you're the rhino, right?
Yeah. And also, I want to say, at first, I didn't really like the idea of President Biden, and I still don't. I didn't like the idea of President Biden giving Donald Trump the stage, letting him be on the same stage. I don't think Donald Trump deserves to be on a debate stage with President Biden.
Post Jan 6 Trump, especially.
Right. Yeah, like only because of January 6th. I think he kind of disqualified himself from running for the presidency, let alone being on the same stage as our president of the United States, who never lifted a finger against his own country. This guy, Donald Trump, actively roots against America. Have you seen those clips where he's like, I hope when America suffers a financial collapse, it's within this next 12 months, not when I'm in office.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ, dude, it's your country.
Yeah.
You live in this country. That's like being in a boat and saying, I hope this boat sinks, but not before I get off. Like, what the hell is wrong with you, dude?
Well, look at, this goes back to his problem with Obama to some degree. Okay, so one of the things that I find that Republicans often say about Obama is like more people went on food stamps under Obama than anybody else. They also, more people came off of food stamps under Obama than anybody else too, because it was directly related to 2008. He came in, fixed it, and then it tapered off and we got back to normal, and then we started to climb again, especially in the second term. Right. So Obama comes in with Biden, with both of them with just brooms and fucking dustpans, and are cleaning this shit up after the runaway 8 years of Bush. And the reaction, again, McCain, famously stopped his campaign and was like, we need to go back to Washington to talk about this. It was just a ploy. But ultimately, neither McCain nor Obama thought, well, fuck, now it's going to ruin my presidency, you assholes. They just went, I'm the guy to fix it.
Yeah.
I can come in no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And emergencies happen. Terrible things happen to countries and to economies and stuff. So whichever, they were both, bless their hearts, both of them, McCain and Obama, were running to be the guy who could get us through the terrible. Trump is literally running as like, I hope that shit doesn't happen on my watch. I hope it happens now so I can blame him. And then my buddies can, buy the dip in the stock market, which is really what they do.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
That's he is running to avoid the problem. And I think it's because he thinks the presidency gives you like unlimited power. He still believes that. He believes Obama had it, which he didn't.
Right.
He believed remember that whole, like, they shoved it down our throats. They'd always have this big kind of oddly sexual thing with Obama, right? That he's shoving this stuff down our throats. Like, And so I think, which wasn't true, he had to get stuff passed through Congress like everybody else, and it was work like it is for everybody else. Mm-hmm. But I think Trump came in with this idea that he was going to be able to be king, right? And and then when he got in, he's like, wait a minute, what do you mean I have to ask or it has to be legal? Fuck this.
Well, the kind of life that Donald Trump has lived, he hasn't had people checking him, people telling him, no, you can't do that. No. He's had a lot of sycophants around him, a lot of people, yes men, people telling him, oh, that's the best idea, boss. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. Oh, I love it so much. And so being
like Michael Cohen.
Exactly. I think he hated the idea of, like, his racism, hated the idea of a black president. And I'll never forgive him. I'll never forgive him how he treated our first black president, because, it took so much for President Obama to get elected. He had to be like the best of us, like Harvard education and Harvard law and this and that. And it was a senator and the state senator and then a U.S. senator. All this stuff, and he was incredibly intelligent and charismatic, gracious, and likable,
a genuine family man,
So, and after all that, he subjected President Biden to that whole birth certificate nonsense, which played into the fear and hatred of what is now his base, the people who who elected him.
Well, the Tea Party and the people who
he hates the same people that we hate. He
says he talks just like we do when nobody's around.
Right. So getting back to the whole thing where the
debate
of him, him being a king, and not being checked. That ties into his attempt to claim presidential immunity, the presidential immunity, so that he doesn't have to face the consequences of his actions. But he should. Yeah. He absolutely should.
No question.
And not just some of them, all of them. I don't think you should get a pass on anything. I've thought about this long and hard. Like, what happens after this election, and God willing, President Biden is reelected by humongous numbers, by a freaking landslide. Yeah. What happens to
8 to 10 million votes? I'm calling it. Yeah.
What happens to all those cases that have been postponed or delayed because the Eileen Cannon's shenanigans and all those other cases? What happens to them? Does he get pardoned? I hope not. Don't listen to Mitt Romney. I hope that he gets prosecuted and convicted for whichever cases that that the jury finds him guilty for. That's what I think.
I agree, and I know that will happen to some degree. I think what'll happen is after he loses the election by an embarrassing margin, you're going to see a stampede away from him from the chattering class of the Republican Party as they try to rebuild or whatever. It'll be a lot of talk in the news, and I'm sure everybody from CNN to Katie Tur will be talking about this rebranding that's going to happen, and they got to rebuild themselves, and it's time for them to do some navel gazing and blah blah blah. But a lot of them are just going to try and stiff arm him as best they can, and he in that is not going to do well. and we're real close to him pulling a Weinstein or a Cosby, in court.
Oh.
Coming in with a walker with tennis balls on it and going, I don't understand, and then, but he's so stupid, he won't be able to play the role outside. Like, he'll walk out and go, today was bullshit. I don't need the walker. This is all a big witch hunt. I had to pretend to be blind. Where are you? Where, like, that, you know what I mean? Like, that's the weird part about it, is like his ego won't even let him bullshit. Like the fucking Golden State Killer. I don't know if you ever saw the trial of him where they're wheeling him in and he's like, like he's wasting away in the chair and he can't sit up and he can't blink. And then they fucking cut him, like he didn't know they had a camera in the like holding cell or whatever. He gets up out of his fucking chair and is like walking around shaking his head, and you're like, you motherfucker.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I never saw that.
Yeah, he got caught essentially in that. But Trump is so dumb, he would just go, I totally bullshit them today. This is a witch hunt. Shouldn't happen. You know it. You fucking know it.
Yeah, he would. That's funny.
Yeah. So what do you think our focus should be going into the election cycle, as far as, like messaging, get out of the vote, all that kind of stuff? I mean, it's super crucial.
I'm going to tell you. So one of my favorite things that came out of the past 2 months, like President Biden has been doing a lot for the people. When I say the people, I don't just mean like, lip service. Like, just yesterday, it came out that they're changing marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 drug, which is actually a huge deal. Now, I used to smoke weed. That was my favorite thing. I am now 20 years, going on 21 years, clean and sober.
Right on.
Thank you. And I'm be perfectly honest with you. I miss smoking weed.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
I do, but I don't begrudge anybody else having access to it. I think,
right.
I absolutely.
When you have kids, it's like the Cat Williams thing about, like, when you have kids, you can't talk to your kid about like, who ate all the Fruit Loops or whatever. Like, oh, what happened to the Fruit Loops?
But just because I can't partake in it doesn't mean that I begrudge anybody. I think that's a great thing.
It is going to change so many elements of our baseline criminal justice system in a bunch of areas. It's also going to eliminate a lot of the kind of automatic rebellion usage of it for that sake or whatever. It will also make it easier for them to make rules about the levels of THC and that kind of stuff, which has been kind of like runaway science over the last decade, especially as it's legalized in California.
The biggest thing about this, though, is that people of color are disproportionately affected by laws that dictate how much time you spend in prison, or if you go to prison at all for possession of this thing. I guess if you have a certain quantity of it, and it shows intent to distribute or whatever, you should do some time. But if you hold in a nickel bag, you shouldn't. No.
Well, in the volume some people are smoking, you're like, they could look like a full-on drug dealer back in the day. But you're like, no, this is personal use. Like, I know people like that. I have a lot of musician friends, and like if their house was raided, it would look like they were distributing to the whole neighborhood, and they won't let you touch it. Like, that's mine. Get away. Yeah. So I agree.
My favorite thing that has come out of the Biden administration in the past month is, have you heard about the thing with the airlines? Like, so if your flight gets canceled or your flight gets delayed, like, you don't even have to call yourself. It's automatic. You automatically get a reimbursement for this within 20 days. That's huge because I remember going through some red tape rigmarole with the airlines, and it's not fun. You'll be on the phone on hold for an hour, and then the call drops. You lose the call after a freaking hour, and like, what?
That's the whole dividend. So for people that don't know, that there's one of the ways, and especially when it's in a high volume thing. One of the ways that a business can make money is, or guarantee themselves keeping some of their money in a situation like that, is that they just make the hurdles so high that most people will tap out. And there's a significant psychological number of people that will go, we can save ourselves X million, X billion a year if we just make it a little bit harder. If the phone drops occasionally, right? And that people go, fuck it, right? And if
I knew that was intentional. I knew it.
There's no reason to fix it. There is no impetus to fix it because you're actually making money by not fixing it in that situation. And that's what government regulations are for. And so there's a bunch of those areas where in boardrooms, they'll make a decision. Do we make this easier to fix for our customer base so that people want to sign up for our rewards program and they like us and therefore, or do we make more money with people just hanging up the phone? Well, as long as we make more money with it hanging up the phone, the people who are with us and get our miles or whatever will put up with it. Or they'll use a different app. Use our Advantage app or whatever, and you can go straight to it. Or it's automatic because you have a certain number of points. Then that will trigger it. Everybody else has to fucking stay on the phone or stand in line at a fucking counter in the airport, exhausted as shit, bleary-eyed after 9 hours of dragged flights and stuff. And so God bless Mayor Pete and the good work that they are doing. So
That's right.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
So I brought up those things, and there's a bunch of other things that I could bring up, but you don't have enough time on this call for that. So we should
Yes.
as often as possible promote the positives, because there's going to be negatives about the Republican Party and about Donald
Agreed.
Trump to last a lifetime. So we should absolutely continue to kick them in the nuts as often as possible, but also uplift and promote things that
Metaphorically.
President Biden and the Democratic Party have been accomplishing. Also, I think we should spend some time highlighting the fact, because I'm getting a lot of traction on these particular tweets, highlighting the fact that corporations are making like historic profits, billions and billions and billions of dollars of profits. Their CEOs are getting ridiculous amounts of what do you call those, bonuses, et cetera, et cetera. And they're crushing us with the price gouging. They're gouging the prices to the nth degree, and Republicans have blocked Democrats' efforts to pass a bill to stop price gouging. So that should be highlighted too. There should be a focus on the greedflation. They constantly talk about inflation, like President Biden is sitting in his office in the Oval Office saying, you know what, today let's push up the price on bread.
Let's fuck with people's omelets. Right.
It's not him. It's not him affecting the inflation. It's not him calling up these food companies, gas companies, saying, hey, I think your prices are too low. Maybe you should raise them.
Yeah.
He's not doing that.
Yeah, he's not like, could you squeeze an extra nickel out of these folks? Yeah,
they're just getting richer and richer. And meanwhile, they're not paying their employees more. There's so many people who are still stuck on $7.25 an hour, which is a crime. It's a crime. They're making profits hand over fist, and meanwhile, some of their employees have to get public assistance because they don't make enough money in the minimum wage. And they're trapped in this cycle.
That's another aspect. That's another aspect of I brought this up when we talked to our dear friend the Major, who's working on Dems in red states and red districts a lot, and as a redneck whisperer myself, having grown up in Peaksville, Kentucky, one of the things that you see is like the Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia is this documentary I bring up a lot because it's very illuminating. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have you ever seen the Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia?
I wanted you to say that again. Can you repeat that?
The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia? Yeah, I can.
No.
Yes,
I haven't, but it sounds interesting.
Hold on. Trump said something about my ability to speak. He said...
he can do things with his tongue you wouldn't believe it.
There you go. So... Right. So, anyways, it is a documentary about the White family, not ironically named White family, the family of Jesco White, and they called him the dancing outlaw. The last West Virginia clog dancer. PBS did a special on him. And by the way, when you see him dancing, you'll understand why it was a dying art form. It's basically like a guy with ants in his pants on a picnic table. That's basically what you're seeing. So, anyways, the point is that when Social Security came into existence, the white family patriarch, the great-grandfather, thought it was communism and was against it. So he voted against it in the Senate, but in West Virginia. But when they let it go through, he had his entire family declared mentally retarded, which was the phrase they used at the time, so that they could receive SSI, because he was like, this is all a scam and anybody can just be declared. So he got this doctor in the neighborhood to declare his entire family mentally retarded so they would receive SSI benefits for being, and not have to work, because he was like, fuck the government, and this was his attitude. So they have received benefits because two people who are mentally challenged cannot have a child that isn't, according to science. So therefore, every offspring of the White family qualifies for SSI forever. And so they all live off of it, and they're all basically drug addicts and violent and crazy because they don't have jobs and they don't do anything, and they're they're ne'er-do-wells. And but the idea is that one of the sideline stories is that they work at a bar. One of them works at a bar. One of them, the sexiest one of the ladies who talks like this or whatever. She sounds like she's got a voice that sounds like she's used one of them throat vibrators, but she's actually talking with her actual mouth. She was the sexiest one in the family, so she worked at a strip club down there. Anyways, they subsidize their lifestyle of guns and drugs or whatever above and beyond their SSI that they get with other jobs. So they'll work at a bar, but they don't have to work for tips or shit like that. So they're just kind of like hangers on or whatever. And throughout rural America, especially in the deep weeds, there is this subculture of people who, one of the reasons they don't want 725 or higher is because most of the people in the area get some form of public assistance, because the entire rural area they're in, unlike one section of a city or something, the entire fucking town is impoverished by the legal, definition. So they don't want to raise up that level because these people are already getting SSI or getting some other welfare support, and so they chase it. And that's why Walmart built its headquarters where it did in Arkansas. It's where a lot of these shipping centers are, in the middle of fucking nowhere. And it's because these people are already getting welfare because the city is underwater, or the town, or the village, or the fucking campsite. I don't know what the fuck. And then, and so they only pay that $725 over because everybody else is subsidized to where they're pulling what's effectively $20, $25 an hour, because that combined with their shit. And that's the fight that's been going on, rural versus urban, against the $725 forever, because that doesn't happen in cities. It doesn't work that way.
Blew my mind. I didn't know this. Wow.
Yeah. So and if you look at even like how Joe Manchin talks about people who are getting, he's like, we start handing out UBI, Universal Basic Income, or the child tax credit. These fuckers will just smoke it, right? That was his kind of idea. They'll just go up people's noses and not help the kids. That's because half of his fucking state is the wild and wonderful whites of West Virginia. He thinks the rest of the country's like that. I'm like, no, you do it, and then you just have programs and make sure it goes where it's supposed to fucking go. There's not a reason to not do it. It's not a reason to not raise the national, the minimum wage. But that's what it is. That's why they're always scalping it. And that's the other, in the southern states, especially the border states, they pay people under the table, and then people are on a fake, they're using a fake Social Security number to pretend to be who they are. So they only make $725, but they're making $15 for picking, or $12 really, because if they paid $15, they get locals, but they pay $12 or $8 or something like that. Combine that with this, and then they don't pay they pay into Social Security and never get it out. So that they just kind of, everybody in the southern states just whispers and pretends that shit doesn't happen. So
the whole system is essentially broken. Right?
Yeah, it's ballast on not raising the 725, because that would upset the apple cart of the other. They don't have to pay it on the books if they can pay it off the books. So there's this walking back and forth between, I don't have to pay I don't have to employ them for this amount of money. So if I put out an ad, $25 an hour, $27 an hour, $80 an hour, whatever the fuck it is. Yeah. If I can shave off $7.25, or I can shave off, 12 of that or whatever it is for the state, it doesn't have to go on my books, and I can kind of play. If anybody asks for a raise, I don't have to give it to them, because on the books you're only making this much. On the books, This is the baseline, and everybody's afraid of falling off the cliff of $15 to $7.25 or $20 to $7.25. As long as you keep make that a cliff. If minimum wage got to 12, a bunch of people would fucking quit.
Because they would not be able to collect that SSI anymore?
Yeah. Well, and also they would be able to get a better, like they wouldn't have to fear losing this job and getting a huge drop. They could go someplace that gives them bennies and is a better environment, because it's not dropping from 15 to 7, the baseline. Because this company's got the rig going on to keep the number inflated. It's a really like like above the table, under the table mix economy. Is really the part nobody's talking about, especially in the food picking states where they had migrant workers for a long time. Hillary was talking about, like, we need an open border so people have like a green card. They come across from Mexico, they work, and they go back home. That's okay. That's what she was talking about. Not you come and stay forever, but you come during the season and then you go back home because that's where your family is. It's totally cool. Right. But because the reason the Republicans don't want that is because they'd have to admit how many people they're paying under the table. And it's a shuffle. It's a fucking shuffle. It drives me crazy. Like it's so obvious when you look at farms throughout, especially the southern states. It's ridiculous.
You also, excuse me, you also reminded me of one other thing that we need to do is make sure that everybody remembers that that border security bill was bounced by Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Period. Mm-hmm. Well, every time they try to bring up, Democrats want open borders, they don't want to fix it. But actually, your dear leader was the one who told you not to pass the border security bill, which conservatives have said is like it's like the best border security bill we're ever going to get. We're never going to see anything better than this ever again.
So I have a theory. Well, I'm curious what you think about it. But like, do you think it would help to like take elements of the bill instead of the bill as a whole, like new machinery for detecting fentanyl at the borders, which was in there, and go, your guys voted against that. You know, what I mean? Like,
highlight those individual
specific pieces instead of just the border bill, which seems kind of abstract, and they could kind of abstractly go away from it.
Dude,
but just go.
That is clever. That is a great idea.
Try.
But that's a great idea. I love it.
Pick one. Like they wanted to shorten. Like there's a thing in the bill that shortens the asylum hearing and rejection or acceptance period from 2 years to 90 days. In and out, man. If they're bullshitting, immediately. And if they can't, and it raised the standard for what qualified as persecution. You can't just be persecuted because your country sucks. It's not enough. Your persecution has to be acute and personal, and as it should be, because that's what asylum is for. You can't just say I need asylum because my country's falling apart. Like, well, then go next door to the next country, and we'll help them help you. That's what refugee camps are. That's what AID's for. That's why we work with the United Nations. That's what it's for. But maybe not talking about the border bill in the abstract, but the specific parts of it. Your guy voted against more fentanyl detection equipment. Why?
Yeah, it's excellent. Yeah,
because and by the way, another thank you, Joe Biden. The number of overdose deaths dropped for the first time in 3 years since 2020. First time, like since the beginning of the year, it's down for the first time in this quarter. So fingers crossed it keeps going that way. Obviously, Narcan helps, and there's a lot of other stuff, and maybe we're better at detecting the fentanyl. It'd be even better. So specifics on the border, and then the other thing is do you think they have started talking about? I think they're talking about migrant crime because they didn't pass the border bill. They can't just say open borders because the bill. So they have to say migrant crime now as their new bugaboo. Scary.
But their migrant crime thing is bullshit, because we know that in cities that experienced a spike in migrant residencies, whatever, the crime has actually decreased wherever
Right.
they've arrived. So that's interesting, actually.
Yeah, I mean, those parallels happen all the time. I mean, you don't go, especially if you're seeking a livelihood. If you're not a cartel member sneaking into the country, most people are like, I want a job, so I don't want to fuck around and mess up a good thing. Like, why would you? It makes no sense. Like, the logic of it is very weird, but I guess it's just brown scary. That seems to be the logic.
That is what it is. Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think Boebert holds on to her seat? Do you think Marge holds on to her seat? Do you think Gates is going to get arrested and thrown in jail? Thoughts?
I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is sad to say she's safe. Lauren Boebert, I think there's a good shot at her losing. I think there's a very good shot at her losing her seat. Yeah. I'm not even sure if their primary thing is finished yet. Last I checked, she was struggling in the Republican primary in her state.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not even her district, and I got to say, oddly enough, I just don't see her doing well with the family values conservative crowd lately. I don't know why. Just
Beetlejuice.
Yeah, right. You can't fondle the truth. That was my her yelling outside the courtroom yesterday.
I also found it ironic that that she could not be present for her own son's court appearance, but she was there for in support of Donald Trump. That's kind of obscene.
Yeah, I don't, like, the joke was that she was like the second coming of Sarah Palin, only dumber, and the parallels are fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the Palins as a family, as we, her separating from her husband and the fucking drunken fights and then one of her other kids going to jail for assault and the DUIs and all this stuff. Like, it's like a cookie cutter. It's like everything's a fucking reboot with these people. Trump is like this shitty, like, like the prequels version of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah,
the Star Wars prequels version of Ronald Reagan. It's just like a caricature, but none of the even illusion of substance.
Yeah, that's right. And it's, I look forward to, I believe that we will at some point get back to some semblance of normalcy. But in order for that to happen, I think Trumpism has to be repudiated. When I say Trumpism, I'm including his hangers-on, his wannabes, his Vivek Ramaswamy,
the remnants.
Right. I also do think that Matt Gaetz may have saved himself. I think he's done enough, not with the normies crowd, but with the Trump crowd. He's shielded him by aligning himself even more closely with Trump. He shielded himself from the assault of the so-called normies who had him. I think they were gearing up to investigate him again for the ethics thing in the House because of the role he played in unseating their speaker. I think they were looking to get back at him for that, but now that was a long time ago, and I think he's safe again.
Yeah, I think his deposition is going to be the telling point because he's being deposed in that sex trafficking thing. Yeah, so what? Like I want to say he got served with being deposed in it, and he has to do it like in the next 6 weeks or so. That's part of the ethics situation that could get him out of, technically speaking, out of Congress by election day.
Interesting.
If the arc happens the way it does, if that lawsuit goes through and that deposition, because it's going to be on video. If video of the Matt Gaetz deposition about his sexcapades with Joel Greenberg and this girl come out, or hers and the other people involved start to come out, I mean, you're in a Santos situation by August. If the timing of it works.
All he has to do is lie with a straight face like a sociopath.
I don't think that works because they know he was there. He paid her with Venmo. It's not going to look good. Even with Trump, like this is a good example. Like Trump is his whole bullshit about being, in charge of his business. And I know, better than the accountants where my money goes and blah, blah, blah. He can't now go, I don't know, I was just signing checks. I don't know where they went. I just signed shit and it goes. Like, you can't have it both ways. You are either a masterful businessman in control of every aspect of your business, as it says in your books, and that what you're penny pinching, miserly fuck who doesn't pay people because you're like, he doesn't deserve this. Right. Or, I don't know, I'm so rich I just sign shit, it just goes right by. I don't know. This is what being rich is like. You can't do, they try to have it both ways everywhere. Again, Biden is a doddering old man who's also a criminal mastermind.
Right? Yeah.
So
that kind of brings us back full circle to the I want to say the election interference case, not the hush money case. And I try to say that as often as possible because the hush money thing isn't the illegal thing. The election interference, the fact that he was trying to hide that those payments so that voters would not know what kind of person he was. Therein lies the crime.
Yep, agreed. Well, and he even says it. It's his one honest moment. He goes, "This is all about election interference." Like, you're right, motherfucker. That's exactly what you were doing. We know.
Yeah. And I just hope those jurors, those 12 jurors, put everything in perspective, right? Like, don't let one day of testimony that may have been unfavorable to Michael Cohen and the prosecution's case. Don't let that one day kind of like toss everything else out the window. Everything we heard from Hope Hicks and David Pecker and this witness and that witness and all of the signed checks and all of this.
Right.
You can't just throw all of that stuff away just because, they've reestablished that Michael Cohen is a liar. We already know he lied.
He was paid to lie. It was his gig.
Yeah. He was doing it in the service of Donald Trump. So
yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is that, like, every time they bring that up, I'm like, you do realize it's a binary choice. Either he's lying on the stand now, which means he was telling the truth for Trump and was convicted of, I guess he's an innocent man who was convicted wrongly, and Trump let him hang out to dry and let him go to jail for telling the truth and trying to protect him. Or he was lying for Trump then and he's telling the truth now. The way we know, though, which one it is, because he got him on fucking tape. There's a tape.
Yeah.
Lordy, there's a tape. So I really do think he gets convicted in this situation if it's at all, unless somebody hangs it up on purpose. And if that happens, then, he goes to trial for jury tampering, or somebody around him does, and we'll see how well they serve him up.
I saw someone posted earlier today. They said if a mistrial is declared, that they would retry the case. Is that true?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean,
but then they wouldn't be able to make that happen before the election.
No, that's why they're shooting for a mistrial. He thinks, because he's fucking losing his mind. They think he's going to win the election and pardon himself. He should have pardoned himself the first time for the crimes he committed before he left office, obviously. The problem was he kept criming after. He's so stupid. He didn't even think to, he's like, stop committing criminal acts after you leave, dickhead. Sorry,
not to interrupt, but that other thing, he had a dinner with a bunch of billionaires, and then he told them, he's like, oh, by the way, if you guys give me $1 billion, I will just deregulate the hell out of things and fast track all your approvals for offshore drilling and blah blah blah. Like, that's another quid pro quo, you moron.
Oh my God, that would be a career-ending, for a politician, a career-ending piece of news. It's just so odd that, like, maybe it's this Steve Bannon, like, baffle him with bullshit, just flood the zone. That there's so many scandals that you just kind of, like, they all blur together into one big fucking Trump muck, right?
Yeah.
And that's what he counts on. At a certain point, you could just start, like, he could start committing new crimes because you couldn't even keep track of when they fucking happened.
Yes. Yeah. It's a fire hose of awful. And
Yeah.
at some point mentally, we all, I mean, not like all of us are just like, okay, yeah. So what else is new? It's yet another crime that he's not going to suffer any consequences for. I almost feel like when we learn about new crimes, honestly, when I hear about new crimes, my first instinct is, well, he's not gonna be penalized for that either. I
think it all happens. I just think it happens on an arc, on what Mike Lindell would call God's time, and ultimately, ultimately, I think, and I genuinely mean this, I think the stress of going through the trials is worse for him than winning or losing, anyways. I think this is his. Lawrence O'Donnell said this is his prison. He's in prison right now because he has to be someplace, and he can't be someplace else, and he has to listen to other people, and he has to sit where he's told to sit. That's prison for him. And whether he ends up going to jail or not, it would be a relief to him to go to jail because there's tremendous relief in being totally fucked, right?
Yeah.
And he's never been there. It's the threat of it always. It's why the Jaws, the scariest thing about Jaws was the theme. And
yeah.
Right. So every day in court, is bum 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 bum, and knowing how he feels about Shark Week, I feel like that, like somebody should just on their phone in there just start playing the Jaws theme behind him, just really low, almost imperceptibly low. He's just sitting there, single, like sweat bead going down his face, and then a big dolly zoom where he's like like Roy Scheider in a fucking beach chair.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm not lining up to be a lawyer for someone who wants to be a hot lunch, that kind of thing. Oh, boom.
Is that what that's called, the dolly zoom?
Yeah, it's a dolly zoom. So you dolly in while you zoom out, or you dolly out while you zoom in, and it creates a parallax against the background.
It's
Spielberg
amazing. That thing is always
invented it
amazing.
effectively. Yeah,
okay.
Spielberg invented the actual move. Like, it had happened before in other things, but it was like a happy accident. But he was like, oh, if we time it exactly, it compresses the space, and it really is a shocking, claustrophobic feel. So I believe what he did was he zoomed in while dollying back, and it squoze the background to Roy Scheider's head, widened it out behind him while flattening it. Yeah, that's called a dolly zoom. It's great.
That's one of my favorite effects there. Yeah, it's basically it tells the audience
Naked
what the
Bat
fuck
saying
is happening.
Hitchcock did it twice in Vertigo. Yeah, he did it, but he did it. They freeballed it basically. That was the idea, is that they would do it, but he would just they would just have the guy do it. What Spielberg did was measure it 18 feet to a certain focal length, and they would do it to a specific point. They would, it was a measured act as opposed to just walk up and do it, whatever, that kind of thing. Yeah. So that was the difference between the two of them, what they instituted. But that's what Trump lives in all the time. Like, every time somebody steps on the, Stormy Daniels walks in and Trump has this, So I got to tell you, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you in general. It's always lovely to see you out there fighting the good fight every single day, and I think your idea of accentuating the positive hits me right in the feels, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
Here, but I also believe that incessant mockery is the key to Donald Trump, because while he has no shame, he can be embarrassed. And his biggest fear is being is made to look like a dope or a fool.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. I've actually spoken to quite a few people who agree with you on that note, that the humiliation is the key to throw him off the deep end there. So when we got like Sleepy Don trending all day, that was hilarious.
Oh yeah.
And Trump smells. I think I helped make that number one for a very long time. That was
Thank you.
that was fun. And yeah, and keep hitting him hard. And
Yeah.
I think our goal has to be turnout. Period. 100% turnout is key.
Yes.
Get as many people as possible to vote straight down, like blue, all the way down from the top to the bottom, from the president down to the
Yep.
dog catcher or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Just consistency is the key. Because, like, again, we need a mandate. If you're in a red district, and most people give up on this idea, like, well, mine's going to be red or whatever. Okay, first of all, you got to put the fear of God in the Republican that's running. They got to know that you're blue and you're there. Because then they have to answer to you. And if everybody showed up like they should, then they would go, oh, fuck, I'm not in a Marjorie Taylor Greene district. I'm in something a lot more purple than I'm aware. So I can't act an asshole or not show up because my constituency is starting to march in another direction. If every blue voter voted every time because they give a shit, even in the red districts, you'd see a lot more sensible Republicans because they have to answer to a greater number of people. That's my theory. And then the other thing is that we need a mandate. We need to go so far past the number of people we need to do to get stuff done, so they can't just freeze stuff in the Senate with anonymous holds. That's the key. So I gotta say, like, that's my goal. Is I like hashtag vote.org, making sure everybody's registered and ready to go. Vote
Fired
early, bank it up. Yeah, fired up, ready to go. Banking your vote.
Hal, I just want to
Yeah.
say I appreciate you. I think you're a fantastic host. You know so much. You have so
I talk too much, but
you have so many fun facts and fun accents and voices and things that you do there. This is a great show. Thank you for having me on here. This is a huge honor. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We're on the right team. I knew I liked you. So.
Oh, that was fantastic.
I try, yeah. So I would love to have you on sometime along the the road as we're presenting. Also, live stream podcast. What are you doing? What is your regular schedule?
Let me tell you. So I do a what do you call a YouTube show called Storytime with BDD, and I had started that in 2020 on March 20th, 2020, which was the date.
You and me both, brother. That's right.
It was the date that I published this book here, The Littlest President, right?
Oh, man.
So I published this back then, and the whole reason that I started Storytime was so I could read this to, people. And so it created a little community, and I've kept it going. I haven't podcasted it or anything. It's just something that I do every Friday at 5:30. Meanwhile, I am working on the sequel to The Littlest President, and it's
the
called
Littlest Convict. No,
no, it's called The Bigliest Loser.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
And it'll be out this summer. Shooting for the end of July.
Right on. Well, that's fantastic. And so 5:30 East Coast, West Coast.
5:30 Eastern time. 5:30
Gotcha.
p.m. Eastern on Friday nights, and you can find me on Twitter at mmpadellin or Brooklyn Guy Defiant. Make sure it's the guy with 1.3 million followers, not the guy with 10 followers.
All right, Mr. Dunks a lot. I get it. I got a $1.50 fully clothed, soaking wet over here, and I'm trying to raise my numbers as well. So hopefully we'll send some people your way, and I'm sure there's a backlog of stuff they can catch up on as well, because it's always the fun part about doing kind of relatively evergreen stuff is that you have that. So that's fantastic. We will absolutely check it out. And thank you for coming on. It means a lot. It really does. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay. Cheers. See you soon. Say bye, everybody. There he goes. There we go. Bye, everybody. There we go.
Emojis.
That was cool. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that like. I'll see you guys this afternoon. And I'll see people in Albuquerque tomorrow and radio and all this stuff. Very busy day.